Have you ever had a problem that just really drives you crazy and you can't seem to find the answer and it's irritating to you and maybe you're complaining to all your friends or your family about it and no matter what you do it just seems to stick? Well, I was in that situation for a number of months and it was just kind of an irritant in my shoe, like a little bit of sand, just enough to bother you but not really enough to that you'll take the time to solve the problem. But it became more and more of an issue recently. And I decided I have to fix this. So I took some time and started to dive into it. Now, for me, this problem was actually kind of a fun one because what I was doing in this particular case is I was looking for a name. And so I was looking to try and find the name for a new endeavor that I've been involved in and that we've been working on behind the scenes and been creating for a while. And every time I thought I'd found a new name that would work perfectly, I'd go out and double check to make sure it'd be okay. Someone had a trademark on it, or somehow it wasn't a fit, or there was something wrong with it. And then we just kept hitting over and over and over. And so then I started to look at how do I solve problems and started to ask myself that. And the first thing that I realized was I wasn't really for a long time even trying to solve the problem. And it reminds me of a joke my friend told me years ago about an old farmer and his dog. They're sitting on the porch and a neighbor walks up and sits down next to him. They start talking, and every couple minutes the dog says, "Arr!" and just kind of howls in pain just a little bit. And the rest of the time he goes right back to sleep. And finally, after the dog does it about the fifth time, the guy looks at the farmer and says, "What is wrong with your dog?" And the farmer says, "Oh, he's laying on a nail." And the guy's like, "What? Why is the dog laying on a nail? Why doesn't, here, let me move him." And the farmer says, "Nah, don't worry about moving him. When it hurts bad enough, the dog will move himself." And I realized for myself, I was in that same sort of situation. The name was something I wanted to have, and it was something nice, but it wasn't something that I needed to solve yet. And so it just sat there as a small irritant. Like I said earlier, that little bit of sand in my shoe just kind of bothering me, something I'd think about a little bit, put a teeny bit of effort in, come up with a quick, maybe this will work idea. And then when it didn't, I'd be a little grumpy. But then I did a deep dive in. How do I solve problems? How do I change where I'm at to where I want to be? And I realized there's a few steps that I went through, and I'm hopefully this will be beneficial for you. So the first one is I needed to break it down. I needed to understand some of the critical components, some of the variables. So I knew I needed a name, but then I needed to understand, what does the name represent? And I needed to understand who it is that's going to be seeing that name and who they are as individuals and what matters to them and the way they think. Then I needed to understand some principles that govern the way people think, act, behave, what they feel. And I needed to understand some rules around spelling in this case. And so I had to take and break this thing down into several different variables. And what I did is I started writing all this down, and I actually put it on a giant board with a number of different post-it notes and a number of these note cards. And I just started recording all this data onto a big board. And then I put that board on the wall, and then the important thing next is I gave myself time away from it. I would take breaks. And so taking breaks from the problem is another critical step when you have a vexing problem that doesn't go away. Taking breaks from it and letting that subconscious just mull through all that data is critical. But one of the things that was most interesting to me was I went out and instead of complaining to a couple of people about this, I started strategizing with them. And so I went out and I was asking for thoughts and seeking help. Now, seeking help and asking for thoughts can be totally different. In my case, I had a select few people that I knew were good, trusted advisors that I could talk to about this, and they would be able to give me good thoughts and advice. And so that was a critical one for me, and it started to change the way I was thinking. So each one of these things changes the way we're thinking about the problem. So rather than trying to approach it and solve it the same way I had for months, I was getting a fresh perspective and I was getting new data and I was finding out additional information that relates to my problem so that I could start creating solutions. Then the next thing that I did is I tried brainstorming. And so I went in and I just started throwing ideas out, and I had piles of ideas. I went through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different ideas in the brainstorming session, and I wouldn't necessarily judge the ideas at the time. It was just merely an opportunity for me to get a bunch of information down on paper. Then I can take breaks from it, come back and look at it. Once I had the problem solved, I had a really interesting conversation. I went and presented my idea to one of my trusted advisors, and we had a conversation about failure. And my conversation around failure really helped me recognize I still might not have the name solved. But what I did is I came up with something that in the moment seemed good enough. So I have no idea, because I have not presented it to my target market, to my hoop. I haven't tested to see if they're going to respond positively or if they're all going to hate the name and run from it. But for all the data I have right now, it seems like a good name. But the problem isn't necessarily solved. It's solved good enough for now that I can go back and start working on other items, but I won't know until I take it to the market whether I've failed. And so that conversation taught me that failure is okay. And if I do fail, I have a process that I can go through again because I'll have new data. So I can go through and reevaluate all the information I'd gathered before, plus the information that I've gathered from my quote unquote failure, to find that name that is going to work. So if you're stuck with a problem and you're kind of wondering what to do and how to go about things, I'd invite you to follow a similar process. Take a step back, evaluate all the data, figure out who is involved, what variables are involved, what the objective is, what your goals are, take breaks from it, ask thoughts of others, seek help from people who are experts in that space, take time to brainstorm, and then be okay failing several times along that journey towards success.